Hi, everybody. It's Jen here from Holistic Hope. I hope you are having a good week. Wanting to talk today about something called interoception, in particular, interoceptive anxiety. Now, this might be a newer term for you. It's not a term that is really circulating in the kind of the anxiety world. But I'm really excited about it. I'm really glad that people are starting to incorporate more of the sensory system into our, anxiety and how we treat it. And I'm excited to talk to you about it today because I think so many of you are going to relate to this. And it's a new sort of angle to be able to look at it and be able to then get relief. Taking a couple of steps back, it starts with something called interoception. Okay, so interoception is one of our eight senses. So if you're anything like me, you knew about like the sense of smell, the things you see, things you touch, hearing, right? Maybe vestibular, if you were somebody who deals with vertigo. So many of us with anxiety kind of have that off balance feeling and have heard about vestibular therapy or even experienced vestibular therapy. And then there's a sense called proprioception and then interoception. So I was introduced to proprioception and interoception, I want to say about 5 years ago now, because of my son. So my son is autistic, and we tend to focus more on the sensory system with our neurodivergent friends because um, they do have extra sensory needs, right? Um, and I started working with an amazing occupational therapist. I guess it's about 4 years ago now, or maybe even 3 years ago now. Um, to help with my son, and she was the one who really explained what interoception meant. And it is this our body's ability to really kind of sense what's going on in our body. So interoception controls when we get thirsty, when we get hungry, being able to have a sense of what is happening with our body. If our heart is beating quicker, if we are feeling kind of dizzy, like interoception is like this mechanism to be able to really get cues from our body to give us data of where it is and what it needs, right? I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I need to go to the bathroom, things like that. Okay. Now, with my son, he had an underactive or hypointeroception, which is very common with autistic kids, where they don't get the proper signals for having to go to the bathroom, if they're hungry or thirsty. In Sam's case, he wasn't getting the signals at that time that he had to go to the bathroom, which is why it took him a little bit longer to be able to start, using the bathroom properly. And so she gave us some really awesome tools to be able to help with that and help to build that interoception feeling. And it was interesting because as she was explaining this to me, I thought, oh, I'm the opposite. I feel everything in my body. I've said to, loved ones and friends before, like, what do you mean you don't feel everything that your body's doing? Like, my body, I know when my blood sugar drops, I know when I have hormonal fluctuations, I know when my heart is being quicker and slower, and if it skips a beat, I can remember going to the cardiologist once when I was, dealing with anxiety of heart palpitations, and they said, well, yeah, everybody gets those, like the skipped beats, and just some people can feel them and some people can't. And that concept was always really strange to me that people could not feel everything going on in their body. I can feel my digestion working sometimes, the slightest fluctuations in temperatures and so this idea of not getting those cues was really foreign. And I said to her, I said, Sam is like hypo interoceptive. Can you be hyper? And she said, yes, absolutely. You can be hyper interoceptive. And I thought, oh, okay. Like this is all of my clients, right? And so it started me digging into the sensory systems more and learning more about that. Now, obviously, we've chatted a bit in the past. If you're in one of my groups or on my email list, it's all about the nervous system, right? And we know that when our nervous system, especially when we get stuck in sort of that functional freeze dorsal state, that our nervous system or we interpret sensory data differently. right? We interpret sensory cues differently. We hear differently. We take in a lot of our data differently based on where our nervous system is at. So it makes sense, even though more attention is kind of put on neurodivergency and sensory system, but with people like us that have chronic anxiety, that our sensory system would be not working as it should in all ways too. And I actually changed when I am working with people one on one. Once I started to do the FSP and the RRP training, there's some really great online assessments that we do now that take a look at where you are sensory wise, not just like your GAD score with anxiety, but what's going on in your sensory system. And time after time, it was like, okay, well, yes, these people have anxiety, but they're also interpreting, audio data differently. They are having issues with, touch or tactile, but there was all these differences in sensory stuff. And so it makes sense that the interoception would be affected as well. Okay. So that's kind of a little quick blip at interoception. Now, with interoception, if we think of hyperactive interoception, again, it's this increased hypersensitivity to what's going on in your body. So, really noticing your cues, feeling your emotions bigger, noticing what is going on with your body. And so when we pair that with hypervigilance, which we know again when we're dealing with anxiety disorders and chronic anxiety, our body is more hypervigilant. It's a pretty bad combination, right? So hypervigilance, of course, makes us really be scanning for danger, right? At a very conscious and unconscious level, where our body is just keyed up to make sure that like it's overprotective, right? It is trying to be able to protect us from all the things, and often, misfiring and being extremely overreactive to trigger the stress response, so that it's reacting to things that really aren't dangerous. And that can be extremely frustrating, right? You see so many memes where people are like, with anxiety sharing, like, I wish I could convince my nervous system that I'm not being chased by tigers. I'm just calling the DMV, or calling my, kid's school or whatever, right? But the body, when it's hypervigilant, reacts to a lot of different things in not the most, I don't want to say logical, that's the wrong word, but in not an accurate way, right? Where we're not in danger in those kind of situations. And we might logically know this, but our body is not acting out of logic, right? It's acting out of instinct. So when we have already hyper interoception and we can feel all of these different things in our body, and we add hypervigilance into it, I think you can see already how it would kind of create this feedback loop, right? Where everything that's going on in our body can react to, and that can feel like a threat. So, when you think about especially somebody with like health anxiety, how much these go hand in hand, where it's like, oh, I have this muscle twinge, or a little pain here. And maybe somebody who doesn't have like a hyper interoception wouldn't even feel that, or feel their heart skipping a beat or beating a little bit faster, or whatever the case is. Feeling that little bit of nausea, or noticing that they're breathing a little bit differently, or feeling slightly off balance, or whatever the triggers are for you. For a lot of us, when we get into that extremely hypervigilant place, it's all of the things, right? That's going to feel unsafe. Your hypervigilance, you're going to see that as a threat, and your body's going to respond to it with a stress response. And we can get into this pattern of everything that our body does. And we're experiencing everything because of that heightened interoception is feeling like a threat, and our body's responding to all of it, right? Isn't that an interesting way to look at anxiety? And what we, of course, do about it is everything that we talk about, right? We have to work out nervous system regulation. We have to work at processing stress responses in the moment in a healthy way. We have to look at building our capacity, improving vagal tone, all of those things that we know that can be helpful. Obviously, working at our cognitive beliefs too, once we've really gotten some of those physical pieces in play, and doing some cognitive reframing. But we also want to add some sensory information or some sensory tools into the mix now that we know there is this sensory piece. And that can include things like proprioceptive work, which is also known as heavy work, right? Where we're using the large muscles in our body. It can be doing a kind of like a graded body scans and using different tools to be able to reframe different sensations in the body. It's a really interesting piece to this anxiety puzzle. And I think I know for myself and how I'm practicing, it's definitely changed. And I think that we're going to see that, in the rest of the anxiety world too. Just like we've seen just in the past couple of years, even this nervous system piece starting to become more mainstream as it should, whereas 10 years ago, we were all looking at just like the cognitive pieces of anxiety and not this giant somatic piece and that the nervous system is really at the root of all of it. So yeah, that is a little blurb about interoceptive anxiety. If you want to learn more about it, we are doing a masterclass. It's my first live masterclass in a year, but it's such a topic that I'm really excited to teach people about and just to get people learning more about things like proprioception too, and this giant sensory piece and how the two go hand in hand. So I'm going to do that next week on June 13th. So I'll include a link for anybody who wants to join us for that. And I hope to see some of you there. If you can't join live, you can still sign up and we'll send the recording out to you. And yeah, I hope that that's helpful and it gives you a different way to be able to look at anxiety. Enjoy the rest of your week and we'll chat with you more soon. Bye, guys.